possibly one of the most important aspects of your financial security is up to your budget and planning. So, are you up to the task? Hey guys, welcome back to Road to 500K. This week we're going to be talking about, as you just heard, budgeting and planning. So today basically we're just going to be talking about what constitutes planning, what you should include in your planning, and what you should include inside your budgeting. I may make some more videos later on that are much more thorough, but at this point in time, honestly, my budget is fairly crude. And so I think that you guys will be able to relate to this very well, and that's kind of the point of this series. Let's go ahead and get right into it, and let's figure out what exactly goes into a budget. The number one key to saving as much money as possible is to track every single dollar that goes through your wallet. And I don't mean just your wallet, I mean your credit cards, your debit cards, and your cash. Because if you don't track every single dollar, you will have no chance at making it financially free. So, was that a bit of an exaggeration on my end? Of course it is. You do not have to track every single dollar to the T, but in order to be successful, you have to be disciplined, because the responsibility that comes with tracking every single dollar is what gives you the ability to save in order to become wealthy. Now, it may seem daunting to track every single dollar that goes through your bank account and through your wallet, but there is one key that can help you with tracking those dollars, and it's in the form of limiting your accounts. What I would suggest is that you have a maximum of 3 accounts that you draw money from. This can include credit, although I do not recommend it. It includes debit, it includes cash. By limiting the amount of accounts that you have the ability to cope with the amount of transactions that you make on a daily basis. It may not seem like you're making very many purchases, but in reality there are quite a few. And by tracking and keeping one single account, or maybe 2 accounts or 3 accounts where all of your transactions go through, it gives you the ability to not stress when it comes time to record all of those inside of your budget. So step 1 of planning is to give yourself the tracking discipline that allows you to build your budget. But the second step is going to be actually building the budget itself. There are a few key steps to forming your budget. Number 1 is to take a few months to figure out where your spending goes. Take a look back in the past, or just start from the beginning and go through a couple months and do all of your transactions and record them so that you can figure out and give yourself an idea of where you're spending your money in each category, because this will give you the key factors such as being able to figure out exactly where you need to cut your spending and figuring out exactly where your spending should be going, such as savings and home expenses. Once you take a look at your spending, you may be surprised at how much money you spend on leisure, whether it's dining out, going to bars, or going to a certain park that costs money, such as a zoo or a theme park. You would be very, very surprised to see how much money you spend at those places. And it's probably the number one place to start cutting on your budget. Make sure you give it a cap, and once you've got that cap, do not go over it. I know a lot of you are worrying about what will happen if you end up having to go over into certain categories, such as when your car breaks down, or if you have extra expenses on your rent, such as a dog fee that wasn't last month, or anything else that could be inclement that you may not account for at the beginning of the month. Well, there are certain things that you can do to mitigate this. First of all, take from those leisure accounts or the clothing accounts that you give yourself every single month inside of your budget, and switch the allocation from those categories to the categories that you actually need them. You will never go over your budget unless it's an absolute emergency. If you guys are wondering where you might be able to record your emergency if you have one, I would suggest not recording it at all, because what you should have, and this is something that you should plan before you even create your budget, is an emergency account. I'm sure that a lot of you guys have heard this in the past, but you should have at least $500 inside of a savings account somewhere that can act as a very, very short-term, very easily accessible amount of cash that you can use for any emergency that you may have. What I would suggest is put that money inside of a savings account, know that it's there, but don't record it in your budget. That's not part of your monthly spending, because those are very, very infrequent things and you cannot plan for them. So just having an amount of money that will cover everything, which basically is just an insurance that you've given yourself, is probably the best way to deal with that. And do not record it on your budget, because it's not going to eat into your monthly expenses unless you start having to pay monthly bills, in which case you can add it into your budget. We figured out that you need to track every dollar, and then after that you need to figure out where those dollars are going and categorize them. And also, of course, we figured out that you need to establish an emergency fund. This is actually probably the first thing that you should do. Before you start budgeting, just make sure you have enough money inside of the bank account to cover anything that will happen. So, how do you start budgeting? Well, what I would suggest is that you have a set amount for every single category, and this cannot go above your total monthly income. If you have a variable income, I would suggest once again to use a software such as YNAB that uses basically a variable income type software. It does cost a little bit, it's $50, but it'll save you in the long run if you find that it's effective for you. I do believe that they have free trials, and it is free for students, I'm almost certain. So if you guys are younger, still in school, then you may want to give that a try. But at the very least, your income needs to be at least as much as your budget, if not much more. The higher that it is, the more that you can stack away in savings, which is the ultimate goal of this. And even if you think that you can't put away any money in savings because you're so piled on with debt and loans, and you've got so many payments that you have to make every month, there are a couple key factors that ensure that you probably can save money. If you have a job, you can most likely save money. If you don't have kids, you can most likely save money. And I don't mean just kids, but I mean dependents, such as pets or kids, or I guess other adults that are dependent on you. Now, I know that a lot of people in this watching this video are going to be people who do not have kids, and many of you have pets, but pets are relatively inexpensive as a comparison. So, what is one of the other key factors in being able to save money? Discipline. The number one thing that would allow you to save money is discipline and a frugal lifestyle. So, budget your money accordingly. I have seen people living off of $50 a month in terms of food in the United States because we have such cheap food here. We've got a great agricultural system, and depending on where you live inside the United States, your rent will not be very significant. As a young person, you should be healthy, so your health insurance shouldn't cost very much, and you should probably be on your parents until 26 if your parents have health insurance. But the other expenses should be mitigated. I mean, if you have a car, then obviously you need to allocate some money every month to a car, but that shouldn't be more than, I guess, $100, $200 for gas, depending on how efficient your car is. Taking advantage of these savings while you're young is crucial, because all of that interest that you get on your investments is exponential. So the earlier that you start, the better off you will be. Now, I know you think that you don't have any money room in your budget for saving, but you can go into cheaper dwelling. I am almost certain of that. You can downgrade your car if your car is costing you too much money a month. You can also cut on food. This is going to be the number one thing, you guys, because food in the United States is actually very, very cheap depending on where you live. Same thing with housing. It is typically very cheap depending on where you live. If you're living in the heartland, the Midwest, the South, basically anything other than the northern East Coast and the entire West Coast, you're not going to have an issue with housing or food, because it is all, our country is very agriculturally based. There's a lot of real estate, and it's a very stable economy. So your living costs relative to your income are actually going to be very low. It may not be ideal, but one of the number one ways that you can start saving money if you have a low paying job is, well, I guess to get a higher paying job if you have the skills, but to get another job. Just to add on another job onto your income. Because while you're young, 60 hours a week of work, 50, 60 hours a week of work is not going to kill you. It may be a little bit frustrating, but I've done it. I've done 50 hours of work a week, and right now I'm actually working about 9 hours a day at my job, so that's still 45 hours a week. And at $14 an hour, yeah, it's not the highest pay that you could get paid, but at $14 an hour, I'm able to save a lot of money. Even if I was to go out and get my own place right now for $600 a month, I would still be saving tons of money because I know that I can pay $50 a month for food if I really, really try. And I will probably lose weight, be in better health, because cheaper foods tend to be healthier. I know that a lot of people have this myth that really, really terrible foods are the most expensive, but think about what you see inside the grocery store. Rice is one of the cheapest sources of nutrition that you can get, as evidenced by the rest of the world. It has excellent nutrition values, especially if you're getting brown, long-grained rice. And it also is even cheaper when you consider the fact that when you cook it in water, it expands. So when you think about the foods that you actually buy versus the foods that you should be buying and the foods that you should be eating, really, you'll notice that the foods that you should be eating are the ones that are cheaper. So you can improve your health while saving money. I know that it takes a lot of discipline to do this, but there's two birds with one stone. If you want to be wealthy and if you want to have good health into your retirement, you're going to want to live frugally. So guys, just consider a lot of the things that you're buying that you may not need to buy. I know that I really wanted to buy a truck here recently, but number one, I don't have the money, and number two, I've realized that the money that I would spend on gas and the money that I'd spend on the truck isn't worth it until I actually need a new vehicle. So I'm going to drive my 2010 Hyundai Sonata, perfectly good car, I love it. I'm going to drive it until it dies, and then I'm going to buy a new car. By the time that I need a truck, it's probably going to be the end of the Sonata's life either way. So it's a win-win for me, and it allows me to save as much money in that time span until I actually need the truck. And once I've got it, then I'll just have it in cash. Alright guys, that wraps up this episode's lesson. I guess we're going to move right into my financials here. Today I've got my budget updated for this week, especially this week's theme, this video. And there are some interesting things happening inside of my my net worth. I just paid $500 off of my credit card debt, which had been increasing steadily because I hadn't been getting a paycheck. So now we actually should be seeing quite a few $100s knocked off of that debt, and we're going to be going into the positive here very soon. I'm excited, and I hope that you are, because I hope that it gives you the drive to go ahead and fix your financials for yourself. Alright guys, as you can see, we are out of the red and into the black. We've got $152.79 as our total net worth now. No more debt, and we've halved the distance between where we started and our goals. Let's look at our hours worked. We've worked quite a few hours here. I've started working overtime because I got approved for it. So I've got quite a big check coming along the way. This is the amount that I should be making after taxes. It is a little bit off. I'm using somewhat of a crude percentage. I'm actually making a little bit more than that probably, so probably closer to $1,300. But the real news is, since this week is on monthly budgets, I've updated all of my budgeting. As you can see, it reflects the same value, that $152. This just rounds to a dollar value, so it's not going to give you the exact value. I had to use a little bit of accounting trickery to kind of get myself back on track here because of the expenses on credit. So what I did, you can just do this a completely different way, where you put all your expenses over here and you use your credit as income. Well, that's what I did, at least. And otherwise, you can just start at a negative value up at your starting balance, and then you can just, as you pay off the debt, you can put that into the income column. But once you start keeping track, just make sure to balance everything, make sure that everything adds up correctly so that you get the value that you anticipate, the value that's hopefully reflected in your bank account, or at least your bank account minus your debts. So, so far it's been going pretty well. I've been saving a lot of money. Haven't been really using a whole lot of money for myself, except for this debt, which my planned debt payoff is quite a bit larger than the
or is quite a bit larger in actuality. That's about it for this week, guys. It's getting exciting. We're getting real close to that net worth goal that we've established for ourselves. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe and like for more if you want to keep on watching. Otherwise, just watch along if you'd like to. Hopefully this gives you guys some inspiration.